Hi there, my name's Andy Young and I'm one of the automotive lecturers down at Unitech in Auckland, and this is one of my basic skills videos. And in this video I'm going to show you how to tap a hole. That basically means putting a thread into a hole in some steel, because not always do we want to be using a nut, and if we thread that steel then we can usually eliminate the nut, and it's called captive, captive thread. So there's the bolt. This bolt we've got here is an M8 bolt. Now, just to double check that, if you get one of the taps and just take the bolt, take the tap, and then just lay the threads on top of each other, they should line up. Okay, if you see, if they're staggered and they sit on top of each other, then they're not. It's not the right tap for that bolt. Another way of testing it is if you've got a nut for that bolt, you can actually put the nut onto the tap, run it down there, look, and it should be quite free all the way down. If you start seeing bits of metal coming out and it's stiff, then again there's an indication that you've actually just damaged the thread using the tap, because taps are made of really hard but unfortunately quite brittle metal, because they're hardened, whereas nuts are still relatively soft, and so are the bolts. So usually you can buy, or it's best to buy, a set of 3. Now these are M8 by 1.25, a really common thread size that we use nowadays, and very common in automotive. Also, they sometimes, if you go to an M10, the next size up, then they go a bit finer on the thread. They go like an M10 by 1. The number at the end is the pitch. Now you're going to need something to hold the tap with. Now you can use one of these, or there's another style which I used to prefer quite a lot, which is this style here. I've had to repair that one. It was a ratchet style and the ratchet broke, so I just welded it up. But for this particular job, to make it a bit easier for you to see what's going on, I'm going to use this style of holder. Now you'll notice on the inside there, look, we've got one of the handles rotates, and that means we can open and close these jaws in the middle. And you just get your tap, pop it in the hole like diagonally. If I turn it around, you'll see what I mean at the back, and then we can just tighten that up there. Look, make sure it's good and tight. We don't want that coming loose. And if you can't get it tight enough with your hands, just use a pair of pliers on there, because we don't want that coming loose. Okay, now out of the 3 taps, just take that out there again. Out of the 3 taps, they're all different. The middle one is a starter tap. That's what that's called, and that's the first one that you would use. Now you'll notice that the threads are really almost non-existent at the top, and it's a lot more tapered. This one here is a mid tap, and this one is a finishing tap, or a blind tap they call that sometimes. The blind one is if you're tapping a hole that doesn't go all the way through the steel. It's got a bottom to it, but you want the threads to go as far down that hole as possible. Then you'd finish using this one on this side here, this blind tap. Okay, you always start with a starter tap. That's the one that's really got hardly any threads for the first or third. It very gradually builds up, because this is the workhorse. This is the one that really cuts the threads. Okay, so with an M8 tap, the hole size in the steel can't be 8mm. If it is, then the bolt's just going to drop straight through, and we don't want that. There's a hole there which is 8mm. We can't put a thread in there because there's no material left. The book says 6.9mm hole to be tapped up to an 8mm thread. Now I don't have a 6.9mm drill. I have got a 7mm drill, which is very close, and we're going to use that. If you want maximum thread depth, then sure, you're going to need to go and get a 6.9, but the difference is really very small, so I think we're going to be fine. And I've always got away with using a 7mm drill bit for an 8mm thread. So already I've got this piece of steel, and in the middle I have drilled a 7mm hole. Now this is a 4mm thick piece of mild steel, so I'll pop this in the vise and I'll show you how to tap a hole. Okay, so the first thing to do is mount that in the vise. Let's Poor little vice still needs a spring. There we are. Put that in there. And it's always best to start to tap down from the side that you drilled from, because on the back we've got some burrs and that could make it a bit harder to start. So pop that in the vise. There we go. And we're going to need a little bit of lubricant, so just a little bit of engine oil is fine for that. And we can use just a standard oil can. Engine oil is good. Make sure your tool's good and tight in the holder. There we go. Excellent. You don't want it slipping out. Okay, so we've got the workpiece mounted in the vise, and the first thing we need to do is put a little bit of oil actually on the tap itself. Now make sure the tap's good and tight in the holder. Oh, we've got cutting oil on there. Great stuff, even better. Okay, so a little bit of cutting oil, and stick that in there. Now, the starting is critical. You've got to make sure you remain vertical in both planes. So you need a right angle here and a right angle here, and that you should be looking down onto the tool to make sure. You don't need a great deal of pressure. Just try and turn it nice and slowly clockwise, and you'll feel that tap start to bite into the metal. Now do a couple of turns, because you're only taking off a very small amount of material to start off with. A couple of turns through there, and then come back, and you'll come back, you know, probably 10-15 degrees, and you'll feel a slight resistance. Go beyond that resistance, and that breaks off any burrs that's coming through. And then again, half a turn, back a bit, half a turn, back a bit. Now if it's starting to get a little bit warm, we want to add some more oil or cutting fluid to that. Ben's been using cutting fluid recently. There you go, look. That's just going to help to lubricate the whole thing and cut down on the heat. And it's always half a turn and then click back to get rid of the burrs. Now because this is only a 4mm plate, if we go far enough down with this particular tap, we don't need to use any of the others. That's that done, finished. And we've just cut a thread. If it was a blind hole, then we'd have to use that finishing tap, which has threads all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so just get a rag, give it a clean off, get rid of that cutting fluid. It's really quite a quick process. It doesn't take long to do. Give it a quick clean down, and if you look inside there you go, you can see the threads that have been cut into the steel. And I suppose the final test is if we get the bolt, and that should run through the steel. So we can pop the bolt head into the vise. There we go, and hey presto, we have a thread. Great job. It is a little bit stiff on the threads. It's not normal that's the case. So I'll run that finishing tap through and we'll see if that's just going to cut those threads just a little bit deeper. Okay, so we've got the finishing tap in the tap holder now, and we're just going to run that through all the way down just to clean out and finalize those threads, because they're still a little bit tight on the bolt and we don't want that. There we go. Pretty good. There we go. That's better. Okay, so we're finished. That was how to tap a hole. We used a starter tap initially through the hole, wound that down, and every half turn we brought it back a little bit to break off the burrs, and then just to clean out the threads, make sure there's nothing still in there, and they're exactly finished. We used the finishing tap, and that's still in the tool here. Look, and that's got the threads all the way down. And we now have a piece of steel that's threaded M8 by 1.25, which we can now put bolts through. And that kind of process is very, very useful in a workshop environment. Obviously, you know, tapping holes comes with experience. You get better and better at it. If you're unsure what drill size to use for a particular thread size, just Google it. There's loads of tables available to you online to give you the information that you need. Obviously, make sure you've got some decent drill bits, and of course make sure that the steel that you're using to tap the holes is of a reasonable quality. Otherwise, those threads that are inside there are only going to be as good as the steel that you're using. Also, just bear in mind that some steels can't be tapped very well. Things like spring steel or hardened steel. You're going to find it really hard to drill a hole through that to start off with, but it's also going to be really hard, being a much harder steel, for the tap to cut. If whilst you're tapping you feel that the tap has jammed and it doesn't want to go any further, don't force it. The reason for that is the tap is quite brittle, and if you force it, chances are you're going to break it. Just take it back out, make sure there's no swarf trapped in there, put some fresh lubricant on, and just try again. There's got to be a reason why it's jammed. If you force it, you're going to break it. Okay, I hope you found that video helpful. My name is Andy Young. I'm one of the automotive lecturers down at Unitec in Auckland, New Zealand. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down the bottom in the comments section, and I'll do my very best to get back to you as soon as I can. If you found the video useful, then please do subscribe to the channel, and then you'll receive notifications of any new videos that are uploaded to the channel as and when that happens. And hey, you might find one or two of those new ones helpful too. Okay, thanks for watching. Cheers, over and out.